Imagine waking up one morning in the glittering palace of a mighty empire, only to discover that your entire race, your people, are marked for death. The very man you sleep next to, the king of Persia, unknowingly signed their death warrant, and you are the only one who can stop the slaughter. Yet one wrong move could cost you your life. This isn't a fantasy or a script from a thriller, it's the true story of Esther, a humble Jewish orphan who became queen and found herself standing between the annihilation of her people and the wrath of a bloodthirsty enemy. Her story is one of courage, timing, and an unwavering trust in divine purpose. Get ready to be shocked, inspired, and held in suspense as we dive into the breathtaking tale of Queen Esther, a woman who defied the odds and altered the course of history forever. Esther's life started far from the opulent halls of royalty. She was born Hadassah, an orphan Jewish girl raised by her older cousin Mordecai in the sprawling city of Susa. Despite her modest background, Esther's life took a dramatic turn when King Xerxes, known in Hebrew as Ahasuerus, banished his first queen Vashti for defying his public command. The king launched a massive empire-wide search for a new queen, and Esther, along with countless other women, was taken to the royal palace to compete for the king's favor. But here's the first shocking fact. Esther, the girl who would soon wear a crown, hid her true identity. On Mordecai's strict advice, she kept her Jewish heritage a secret, blending into Persian society while rising through the ranks. This secret was no small thing. Revealing it too early could have cost her everything, even her life. When Esther was finally brought before the king after a year of beauty treatments and preparations, something astonishing happened. Xerxes was instantly smitten. Out of all the women, it was Esther who captured his heart. She was crowned Queen of Persia. But even as she ascended to the throne, no one, not even the king, knew that his new queen belonged to a people often viewed with suspicion. While Esther adjusted to her new life as queen, far removed from the struggles of everyday people, an insidious plot was brewing outside the palace walls. Haman, a high-ranking official in Xerxes' court, had been promoted to a position of immense power. But Haman was not just ambitious. He was egotistical and vengeful, a man who demanded absolute reverence. When Mordecai, a devout Jew and Esther's cousin, refused to bow before him, Haman's simmering anger boiled over into a deep hatred, not just for Mordecai but for all Jews. And here's where the story takes a horrifying turn. Haman, driven by his personal vendetta, didn't just seek revenge against Mordecai, he devised a genocidal plan to exterminate the entire Jewish population within the Persian Empire. Shockingly, he convinced the king to issue a royal decree that sealed the fate of the Jews, setting a date for their total annihilation. The decree allowed Persians to murder Jews and seize their possessions, and it was signed into law with the king's own seal. What's mind-blowing is that Xerxes, oblivious to the fact that his queen was Jewish, had no idea that he had just condemned her people to death. When the decree was publicly announced, panic spread like wildfire among the Jewish community. Mordecai, realizing the gravity of the situation, tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and sat in the city square weeping openly. He sent word to Esther inside the palace, revealing the full extent of Haman's deadly plot and urging her to intervene. But Esther faced an impossible choice. If she approached the king without being summoned, she risked immediate execution. No one, not even the queen, was allowed to see the king without a royal invitation, unless by some miracle the king extended his golden scepter as a gesture of mercy. Mordecai's response to Esther's hesitation was not only challenging but life-altering. He told her that she could not remain silent, warning, "If you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this." This was the pivotal moment of the story. Would Esther gamble with her life to save her people? Could she risk her newfound luxury and safety for a cause that seemed hopeless? Esther's response was nothing short of courageous. She asked Mordecai to gather all the Jews in Susa for 3 days of fasting and prayer. She too fasted, preparing herself for the ultimate test. The tension was unbearable as Esther dressed in her royal robes and approached the king's throne, each step echoing her bravery and her fear. What would happen? Would Xerxes raise his scepter, sparing her life, or would her boldness be met with instant death? In a moment of breathtaking suspense, the king extended his golden scepter toward her. Esther had been spared, but the real battle was just beginning. Rather than immediately revealing Haman's plot, Esther used her wits to invite the king and Haman to 2 private banquets. She needed to play her cards carefully, building trust and setting the stage for her ultimate request. During the second banquet, Esther dropped the bombshell that would change everything. She revealed her true identity and exposed Haman's plot. "If I have found favor with you, your majesty, and if it pleases you, spare my life and spare my people," she pleaded, laying her fate before the king. Imagine Haman's shock and terror when he realized that the queen he sought to destroy was none other than Esther herself. The man who had set a date for the Jewish massacre now found himself on the verge of ruin. King Xerxes, enraged at Haman's betrayal, stormed out of the banquet hall. Haman, desperate to save his life, threw himself at Esther's feet, begging for mercy. But when the king returned, he found Haman in a compromising position and, misinterpreting his intentions, ordered Haman's execution on the spot. Here's the twist that shocks everyone. Haman was hanged on the very gallows he had constructed to execute Mordecai. The instrument of his hatred became the tool of his downfall, an irony that still resonates through history. But even with Haman dead, the threat to the Jews remained. The decree for their annihilation had been issued under the king's seal, and it could not be undone. Esther's work was not finished. In a brilliant countermove, Esther and Mordecai convinced King Xerxes to issue a new decree. This second decree allowed the Jews to defend themselves against anyone who tried to attack them. On the appointed day, instead of being slaughtered, the Jews rallied and triumphed over their enemies. Across the Persian Empire, their victory was overwhelming, and they were delivered from certain death. This miraculous turn of events is celebrated to this day during the Jewish festival of Purim, a celebration of survival and the triumph of good over evil. Esther's story is one of the most remarkable in history, not just for her bravery, but for her wisdom, timing, and unwavering faith. Her rise from a Jewish orphan to a Persian queen was nothing short of divine providence. Without her intervention, the Jewish people may have been wiped out, and with them, the lineage that would eventually lead to Jesus Christ. Here's one last shocking fact. Esther's story could have ended in silence and submission. She could have hidden in the palace, letting fear paralyze her, but instead, she stood up, knowing that her voice was the only thing that could save her people. Esther didn't just save a nation, she became a symbol of courage for all generations. The story of Esther reminds us that even in the darkest of times, one person's bravery can make a difference. And sometimes, as Esther's story so powerfully demonstrates, that person is placed in their position for such a time as this.